it's hitting it. And because of the properties of that large-scale entity, the rock itself, it's absorbing some wavelengths of light and it's reflecting other wavelengths of light. And because of that, you see with your eyes the color blue. It's within the spectrum of electromagnetic radiation that our human eyes can perceive. And again, everybody sees things differently. I think I see the same thing. I kind of hope I see the same thing you guys are seeing. But can you get it that it's an emergent property? It's a property of the rock, the whole thing. The little pieces of it aren't blue. They can't be blue. They don't do those kind of things. Okay? So another example, we'll talk about this way later in the semester. It might be an emergent property of a termite colony. So one characteristic that is an emergent property of the colony as a whole that is not expressed at the level of individual termites might be the ratio of soldiers, a caste of termites that has morphological and behavioral characteristics that protect the colony from invaders, say the ratio of soldiers to workers, okay? That's an emergent property of a colony. You can't just grab an individual termite and it can't express the ratio of soldiers to workers, okay? Would the ratio of soldiers to workers, do you think that's important at all to that colony? Yeah, it's just like it is to people. So you can have 99.5% workers and 0.5% soldiers. Is that good? Well, if you're ever attacked, probably not. Okay? So you could swing it the other way and have almost all soldiers and almost no workers. If you're attacked, you're going to win, right? But there ain't nobody doing any work. You don't do so well as a colony. So somewhere in there, there's a kind of a sweet spot of a certain amount of soldiers to a certain amount of workers. And of course, we'd see that changes with time. Maybe in good years, you can get away with more workers. In bad years, you get away with, you need more fighters in your colony. The important point here is that that ratio is an emergent property of the colony, and it's not expressed, like physics and chemistry, it's not expressed by the little parts. It's not something that makes any sense, okay? So, yes, biological processes obey the laws of physics and chemistry, but you often cannot reduce them to the language of physics and chemistry because there's something else that emerges at this higher level of organization, and that's the kind of stuff that we're going to talk about in our class. Okay? So that's one of the laws. And then, can I get rid of this thing over here?
Yeah.
All biological processes and all the differences that distinguish species have evolved under the influence of another process called natural selection. So, if all biological processes and all biological entities have evolved under this process of natural selection, is it important to understand this? Yep. That's what our class is about. That's why this class, evolutionary biology, is one as a biology major you have to take, because you can't understand anything in biology unless you understand evolutionary biology. I'll say it again. You can't understand anything in biology unless you can understand evolutionary biology. Okay? Doesn't make any sense. All right? In fact, they quote a guy, geneticist from the 1930s. They quote him in his book. He says, nothing at all in biology makes sense unless you understand evolutionary biology. Paleontologist that we'll talk about later, he said, life is the most important thing in the world. And the most important thing about life is evolution. So, do people, let's pick our country in 2016, the people that you spend time with out there in the rest of the world, do they understand evolutionary biology very well? No, they don't. They're terribly ignorant of how evolution works and how the world works. That's going to be one of our take-home things near the end of the semester. It's a take-home assignment. You're going to go look in newspapers and magazines from this year, and throughout the semester we'll talk about common misconceptions in evolutionary theory. And you're going to find something that somebody wrote that's wrong. It's real easy to find because nobody gets it. Okay? So if our fellow citizens in the United States don't understand evolutionary biology, and biology itself, you can't understand that at all unless you understand evolution, how do our fellow citizens understand biology and life on Earth? They don't. They don't get it. And all you got to do is talk to just about anybody, and they don't understand how the world works. Okay? That's why it's important to have this class and to talk about the stuff that we do, because as biologists, what you're going to go out and do with the rest of your life, academically and professionally, you can't get it. You won't understand it, and you can't make it work unless you understand this evolutionary biology foundation. You got any more seats left? One back there. Okay? So, these are some things that are exemplifying the importance of this stuff. And also, if you just look at other fields, agriculture, medicine, even engineering, computer programming, they use these same kind of principles and ideals that we'll talk about in here that apply to living systems, the fields of conservation biology. And there are great examples throughout the book that talk about the importance of evolutionary biology and conservation biology problems. After we take care of some of this introductory stuff, we're going to talk about a medical problem and exemplify the importance of understanding evolution to solve medical problems. Okay, because almost all of our medical problems are biological problems. And biological problems are what? Only understood in light of evolution. You can't solve them unless you understand what's going on, why they are the way they are, and how they got to be that way. Okay. Another thing that I want to point out is that our class deals with different kinds of answers than maybe you're familiar with. Our class deals with ultimate causation and ultimate answers. Okay? What does ultimate mean? It comes from a Greek word ultimus, which means far away from. Okay? What's the Greek word for right next to or close? That's the same meaning, yes. Proximus. Okay? So we have a word that comes from proximus, and it's what? Approximate. Yeah, or an approximation means it's right next to, or it's kind of near something else. So a lot of what you deal with, particularly in a physiology class, you deal with proximate questions and proximate answers. We will ask the same questions in here, but come up with ultimate answers to the same questions. Let me give you an example. How many fingers do I have on each of my two hands? Yeah. One day I went over to Red Lobster, and I was sitting there, you know, when it's crowded, you're sitting outside waiting, and a guy came, I don't know, he's about 67 years old, he came and sat down, he was waiting too. I looked at his hands, studied his hand, he had 6 on each hand. And it wasn't no little wimpy little finger, he had 6 good fingers on each hand. But most of us, remember, exceptions to the rules, right? Okay, so pretty much we all have 5. Why do I have 5? Why am I pentadactylous? I have 5, 5, 5, and 5. Why? The proximate answer is what? It deals with physiology, and it deals with regulation of growth of some cells, and apoptosis and death of other cells. So we can explain physiologically why I have 5, 5, 5, and 5. That's a proximate answer. Back up. And there's an ultimate answer. Why 5? What's the answer to that? Because we have 5 and 5 that add up to 10, that's why our money's in tens and our stuff, our system is all in tens, right? Like the decimal system. It's because we got 5 and 5. But why do we have 5 and 5? And 5 and 5? Yes. Ooh, good. Yeah, you'll learn, you just say that. And then in a couple of weeks, the answer to almost all my questions, just yell out, natural selection. And you'll be right almost all the time. It has to do with the common ancestor of all quadrupeds. What's a quadruped? Yeah. For what? Yeah. So if you're a pedestrian, you get around town how? You get your mom drive you around. No. Yeah. A pedestrian, you use your ped. You use your legs. We are quadrupeds, meaning 4 legs. Okay, this is odd. We should be like this. Okay, but we are pentadactylous quadrupeds. The ultimate answer is because 370 million years ago, the common ancestor that gave rise to all living quadrupeds, what did they have? 5, 5, 5, 5. Why? I don't know, could it have been 6? Yeah. Some of those old organisms had 6 and 7. The ones that gave rise to all living extant lineages of quadrupeds, and those are what? Mammals, reptiles, amphibians, and birds. Are birds quadrupeds? Well, kinda. They're bipedal, like we are, but they're bipedal quadrupeds. Do they have 5, 5, 5, and 5? No.
Yeah.
Kinda do, yeah. Particularly if you look at them when they're really young and they're developing, 5, 5, 5, and 5. Now, they've lost some of those, so if you're eating Kentucky Fried Chicken and you get the wings, I like the wings, I think there's only 3 fingers left. I think it's these 3, okay? And how many are on their feet? It's these 4 fingers. This one's pretty much gone. But we'll see some cases where these things are still there, and yet they're not there. But where are they? Where do things like that hide? They're in your genes. You don't get rid of that stuff. It stays with you, okay? But because the common ancestor of all these modern lineages of quadrupeds had 5, 5, 5, and 5, we have 5, 5, 5, 5. It would actually have been better if we were 6s, because then we could have a system where we worked in 12s, and you can divide up 12s a lot better than you can 10s. So like our clock is on 12. It's easier to divide that up by 2s and 4s and 3s. But we did it this way because, for that reason. You get the difference between a proximal answer and an ultimate answer. So our class, our evolutionary biology class, is dealing with ultimate answers to those same kinds of questions. Okay? Let's see. We're also going to talk about misconceptions, and we'll hit these all the way through our class. We'll talk about things like, are houseflies better than humans? Are dogs better than houseflies? What's better? What criterion might you measure better by? I don't know. They're all the same in that respect, okay? If you want to measure it by the number of individuals on Earth, who wins? Houseflies, yeah, okay? If you want to measure it by how well you can write, compose some kind of orchestra, well, flies don't do that so good, and dogs don't do that so good, then we win. So we'll see with respect to our class and what we're talking about, what things aren't better than other things. Also, if what's better is how long you've been around. How long has our species been on Earth? 200,000 years. Sounds like a long time, but you can find things that you would call houseflies millions and millions and millions of years in the past. Okay, so in that sense, hey, they've been around longer, they're better. Don't think of things as being better than something else. They're all the products of this immeasurably long process of evolutionary biology under the forces of things like natural selection, and they are the things that we see today. But the things that we see today are only a small fraction, 1 or 2% of all the things that have ever existed in the history of Earth. Almost everything, every species that's ever existed, almost all of them are gone. But some of them have given rise to other things. Others have not given rise to anything. We just happen to be among the several million things that are on this planet in the year 2016. The other thing to keep your eyes out for are things like determinism, the idea that these processes have a goal and they're trying to get somewhere, or they're trying to attain some state in the future. We'll see very soon that's not how biology works, that's not how evolution works, that's not how natural selection works.